Welcome to Tools for Liberty, a program designed to intrigue you, to stir your nerves, and to offer your mind critical thinking and adventure. I am J. Dylan Proctor, and here with me in Chord Purgatory is Amanda Sparrow and Anthony Allegria. Normally we each introduce ourselves, but Amanda is actually outside speaking with our resident anchorite. So Anthony, would you go ahead and cut to Amanda?
Today at Tools for Liberty, we're going to be talking to our resident anchorite, Athanasius. Athanasius, are you in there? Hey. And just as a reminder, an anchorite is someone who's walled up at a church and to spend time for penance and reflection. So stay tuned.
Now, there's a lot of conversation to be had about both an anchorite and St. Valentine, as St. Valentine's Day is coming up. But before we discuss any of that, we're actually going to talk about Logan Paul and the demonetization on YouTube. And at the end of our program, there will also be a devotional. But before we go any further, let's jump right into this conversation about Logan Paul. And Amanda is now back with us. She's been slipping back into the studio. And let's let her fill us in on exactly what is going on with this incident with Logan Paul. Amanda, would you keep us up to speed on this whole situation?
All right, so Logan Paul is a YouTuber or a vlogger, and a lot of his videos are on YouTube. And apparently he is famous enough to not only have lots of imprint on YouTube, but he also has merchandise that he sells through his line. There's people who follow him quite fanatically. He has kind of his own little fandom around him. Anyways, he was filming an episode in Japan in a forest there that is actually known as Suicide Forest. And while there, he filmed a dead body. He would later apologize, saying that it was in poor taste, but people began to wonder if he was truly apologizing or if it was just kind of because he got caught or he was getting in trouble. Also, more recently, he published another video on his vlog where he was tasing a dead rat and was poking at a fish that was out of water. And this continual kind of odd behavior and really just kind of uncouth behavior started this controversy where people were beginning to be very interested in YouTube and how it regulates the various videos that are put on the website. Also, how much power does YouTube have in enforcing rules? Now, today, this kind of controversy has come back up. It's been a while since he's done all this, but it came back up because today YouTube has issued a statement that says that because of Logan Paul's recent behavior, they are going to temporarily stop his ads that are on YouTube. So he still has a channel, he can still post videos on YouTube, but any kind of ads that would play, kind of on the side of YouTube or right before any other videos, that's all stopping. Some websites have estimated, or some news outlets have estimated, that this is going to cost Logan Paul about $1 million a month in revenue because he will no longer have these ads. So this is kind of something, it's been in our pop culture for a while. Also understanding really what is the responsibility of kind of these independent vloggers and YouTubers and various people like that. What do they have in impacting culture and videos, and especially a lot of times on YouTube you think of young minds. Do they have a responsibility, and does YouTube have a responsibility, and then how that impacts our world?
Okay, so this is really great for us to have a conversation about because there's a lot of layers to this that are really interesting. First off, there's the whole incident which begins with the suicide forest and filming the dead body. There's been a lot of people who said this is in bad taste, it's immoral to do this, and there's been a lot of different sides around that. And then of course there's the secondary argument that is, does he actually have genuine apologetic feelings, or is he only portraying apologetic feelings because he's been caught? And this is sort of how people react when they're wanting to have their reputation go unmarred. How do we deal with this? And another question that comes out of that with that first situation is, how do we as society implement forgiveness? And this is something which I really think that we can start off talking about, because forgiveness in the church, this is one of the tools that Christ gives to his disciples, especially right after Christ goes to the cross and resurrects in the Gospel of John. The first thing that he really tells the disciples that's anything like a commandment is he tells them to go out and forgive others. Now that happens in a time when there are a lot of people who are wanting to kill not only Jesus but the disciples. There's a lot of tension going on there, and he says forgive people, especially forgive those people who are in mobs who don't really know what's going on. And when I say mob, I don't mean something mafia-like. I mean mob as in people who are just angry, they're screaming, not really being rational. Where does forgiveness lie in our society? And again, we're ministers in the Church of the Nazarene, those of us here, and one of the things that's important in the Christian value system is to be people of forgiveness. And this is something which has really fallen to the wayside in society. So I want us to start off this conversation on the theme of forgiveness. And just with that first element to see what we think about this, how should we respond as people when we see something like this? If somebody apologizes, do we demand that their apology be sincere? Do we just want a plastic apology? Are we willing to forgive people in our society when they actually make mistakes? Amanda, what do you think?
And I think we have to further understand, I think, forgiveness. And forgiveness never takes somebody off the hook for the consequences of their actions. Forgiveness doesn't necessarily say that, what you did was okay, right? It really is just saying that responsibility for taking the penance or getting the penance is going to rely on something else. It's where, especially when Christians forgive someone, they're basically saying God is the one who will ultimately decide the consequences for what your actions. And so, especially in this instance with Logan Paul, Paul Logan, I can't get his name flip-flop, but either way, this YouTuber, is whether or not his apology is sincere. We see this one action that was definitely in bad taste and could potentially be harmful. And he asked for forgiveness, he apologized, and everyone was kind of like, okay, this controversy is going to die down, whatever. And then he continued kind of this, it's becoming more than just an incident, but a habit of maybe some questionable behavior. And again, this doesn't mean that we don't forgive, but it does mean we continually hold him to a standard of accountability, that he's going to have to change this poor behavior if he wants to continue being kind of this YouTube idol. If people are going to watch him, he can't keep doing things that are considered harmful to himself or others. So I think, though, it is interesting, though, we're relying on this outside source, YouTube, to be the judge of his actions, to kind of be the ones that are collecting his penance or giving out the punishment, which can be scary because corporations, especially I think like YouTube and others, are going to ultimately do what they feel like is in their best interest, not necessarily what is in the best interest of morally or what is going to actually produce good behavior. So I think there's a lot going on that needs to be deciphered out in how we interact with this person and similar behaviors.
Yeah, and I think you brought up some good points there. There actually needs to be real repentance, and that's one of the things which is essential to the notion of forgiveness within the church, is that God's grace is unconditionally offered to people. However, grace is not cheap. It's not a petty thing. Grace demands repentance. It demands having something come into your life and transform you away out of that situation towards something which is healthier, moving away from something negative, something chaotic, towards something more meaningful. That's a great point you brought up, Amanda, as well as that idea of we always are looking to rely on external arbiters of morality, and that's really something which has happened a lot recently. And even you do see many companies, even YouTube, a lot of people want to really point at YouTube for censoring different people and whatnot. But if we really look at this, I'm not so sure that YouTube, and I could be completely wrong in this, is the one who is doing it as opposed to they're doing it as a proxy of the mob mentality and culture. I don't know that YouTube itself is the true arbiter of all of this drive, but I do think there is a mob mentality which overlaps into YouTube, where we have the mob mentality which wants to be the external arbiter of morality. So, like, for instance, in this case, everybody's mad at me, so I throw out an apology, and we move along. The mob demands it, so we're going to comply with it. And again, YouTube, whenever the mob demands things of YouTube, they want to comply with that too. There's this external mob mentality in our culture, where instead of being rational and actually having a solid value system, we're relying on these external arbiters of morality. Anthony, what are your thoughts on this whole situation?
Well, my thoughts are mostly concerning YouTube. Personally, I feel like, they're their own corporation, their own website. I think that they should be able to censor whatever they want to, so long as they're forthcoming and honest about what they're doing. I think that they should be allowed to do censor whatever they want to within, the legal right. And so I'm not really bothered by whether or not YouTube should have blocked his ads. But I'll also say for Logan Paul, it's not a very good case for him whenever he's, mutilating things and otherwise filming dead bodies. That's not any good. But
It certainly is in poor taste. And
Yeah.
to just build off what you were saying a little bit, companies do operate differently than something which is a government agency. However, we should not, again, whether we're looking to government or a corporation, we do not find our morality in these external forces. God is the source of morality. We should not idolize these things and say that these are the source of morality. But you do bring up an excellent point about they should be forthcoming about who they're censoring. Because there does seem to be some inconsistency in how they do that. And a lot of times people want to point to this along political lines, but I really think it's more along the mob lines. Where is the cultural mob at this point in time in society? And I feel like that's one of the things which really pushes a lot of what's going on. There were some scandals which went on with YouTube back this last fall. They had some videos which were online available which were inappropriate involving children in a very malicious, very dark and evil way. I'm not going to get into it. It was adult content portrayed as children's content. Horrific stuff that was left up for a long time because the mob really hadn't put their aim there yet. And once it got the culture's attention, they went ahead and pulled it. And so there's this bad problem where the mob is able to manipulate what forces are at play in society, and that's a really bad thing. And we've got to get back to having a personal stance of personal morality in society. So really, I think one of the solutions we have to this is getting back to personal morality, because I think we can all agree that this was in bad taste.
Mm-hmm.
No?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're all in agreement that this is
Yeah.
bad taste.
Mhm.
And there's always this need that we build up things from the inside with nice personal morality, and that is how we go out and we make the world a better place. We don't just wait to see what the mob tells us that we do. We build personal morality there.
Yeah, well, I mean, some people might be like upset at YouTube for doing this. I'm sure the followers of Logan Paul, who weren't too appalled by what took place, I'm sure that they're like, man, he shouldn't be missing out $1 million a month. But again, my point is like, there's some other medium that he could use out there somewhere to shoot his videos. And, that might just be tough luck for him. But YouTube is their own website. I think that, they should be able to reserve the right. And again, just so long as they're honest about what they're doing, which is kind of funny because it's like, should I have to say that they should be honest about what they're doing? But they're not always. Not everyone is. But, just so long as they're honest, I think that they should have the right to do what they want with their own property and their business.
Yeah, I think you're right. And which takes us to the next sort of level is the whole idea with the monetization, because we are a new startup channel at the time of the making of this video, and we have a budget of $0. We're all
We do not make $1 million a month.
certainly not. And for the future reference, anybody feeling a call to ministry, do not be expecting that. We fund this all out of the goodness of our hearts and out of our spare time to make this happen. Which, that being said, if you do enjoy the program, please subscribe and share it and build our viewership. But the question is, when somebody makes a mistake, should they pay the price of their whole life being taken away from them? Should their livelihood be stripped from them? Because this is a theme we've seen lately. And again, it appears that it happens over political lines, and it is connected to politics. But I think politics is the medium in which the mob of the modern age is taking place. We've seen mobs all the way back in the ancient world. There was a mob that took Jesus to the cross. There are mobs which come up, and sometimes they're in political clothes, sometimes they're in other things. That's where they're at now. But this mob mentality is a bad thing, and I just want to have y'all's thoughts. Do you think someone should lose their whole livelihood over one mistake, or do you think if they're genuinely repentant that should not happen? What do you think, Amanda?
I think there's not a quick or easy answer to that, only because I don't think Logan Paul should be strung up, by his fingernails and beaten in the town square or anything like that. And it becomes, I guess, a little bit more weird because it's not a legal issue. He didn't technically do anything illegal. So there's no structured body that is presiding over him. It is the mob mentality. And I think that's the thing that as Christians, especially when we feel like we're standing up against somebody, whether it's evil or just stupid, and we're in the right, it's very easy to get caught up in that mob mentality, and we want to demand justice. And so we have to see, does the punishment fit the crime, so to speak? Does all the things that he has done, does that then qualify him to lose this income? And the truth is, because he is kind of just this probably flash in the pan pop culture star, he will go on and live probably a fairly productive life outside of this YouTube. So, and this by no means is ending his life or his livelihood. But we have to be careful, because it is easy to get mad at, especially politicians or people who are in the limelight. And when they fall hard, and they're almost condemned to this life of continually being reminded of an action that they've done once upon a time. And so again, we have to be careful, because sometimes when we feel justified in our mob mentality, we think then, it's okay. And we end up actually becoming more of a problem, or feeding into the problem, than actually providing justice or any kind of corrective behavior that would move culture and people into a better place. So we have to be careful when we demand justice, how we're doing that, and then how we're implementing it, not just at that one point of the incident, but in the future.
Very good. Anthony, do you have any thoughts?
Well, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of things about the way that the majority of people react to things that I think we would all like to change, including forgiveness. In this case specifically, I'm not sure that he necessarily deserves much, because he can use some other medium. I'm sure that there's another medium he can resort to, and especially of advertisement as well. And I'm also sure that if people still want to watch him, he's not going to have any trouble. Yeah. And his whole income is constituted on whether or not people do want, or I don't know if it's his whole income, but that income is constituted on whether or not people want to see him, Yeah. So it might be a little cruel or whatever, but I mean, we can't just subsidize just any TV show. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I don't expect the majority of people to do that either. Do I think that if I met this guy, would I treat him terribly? No. I mean, I might be a little bit weary of him, but I'm not going to completely condemn him or anything in person, I'd just be like, hey man, what was all that about? And hopefully he'd give a pretty good explanation and I could forgive him for it, But I mean, I really, I have no real beef with him anyways. So I think that it was in poor taste, but there's a lot of things that happen in poor taste. So
yeah. And I think that's a good place to leave that for now. All right. So in our next segment, we're going to be doing Hot or Not with church history. So hang around for that.